me 1 second. I am just waiting for Instagram to start. Uh-oh. Okay. Okay, I want to talk about something today that I think is the reason that most actors feel stuck. And it's not what most people will name when they're trying to diagnose what the problem is. It's not your reel, it's not your credits, it's not even your representation situation, as frustrating as that may be right now. The thing I see tripping up talented actors over and over is that they are waiting to be chosen by people they've never actually met. And I get it. The industry is set up to make you feel like that's the only way it works. You submit, or your agent or manager submits, you audition, you hope someone with power notices you. The whole system is designed around that dynamic. But I want to show you a different way to operate today. Because the actors that I watch build momentum, and I'm not talking about like overnight, but steadily in a way that builds on itself and compounds, they figured out how to move first. And today I'm not talking about creating your own content. That's a totally different conversation, very valid, and it's great. I'm talking about how to create proximity to the right people before they have any leverage to offer. How to be in relationship with this industry rather than just auditioning for it. So I have a framework that I teach inside the table that I want to walk you through today. And by the end of this, I also want to introduce you to someone who I think is the living proof of what I'm about to say. She's a filmmaker who I think may do this better than most people that I've met, but we'll get there. Okay, so let's start with why the way most actors network doesn't work. So most actors, when they think about networking, they think about being impressive. You go to an event, you meet someone, you try to make sure they remember you. Maybe you follow up with a nice email, and then nothing happens. And you wonder, what did I do wrong here? Here's what I've come to understand after years of doing this myself and watching hundreds of actors go through it. The problem isn't that you weren't impressive enough. The problem is that you were kind of performing for someone rather than connecting with them. You were presenting yourself in a way that may not have been super authentic. So when we do that, that puts all the pressure on you and leaves the other person with nothing to do, right? There's nowhere for the relationship to go because it's one directional. You're essentially auditioning for their attention, which means you're back in the exact same dynamic that you're trying to escape. Real connection requires something to flow both ways. And in a situation when you're the one without the credits or the leverage or the resume, the thing you can offer before any of that exists is being of service. Not in a desperate way, not in like a please like me way, I'll help you with anything. I mean genuine, specific, practical service. Making yourself useful to someone because you actually care about what they're building, which is presumably the reason you want to work with them, right? So I want to tell you about a client of mine who exemplifies this. She is a New York-based actor. She's works a lot in theater, wanted to do more there, wants to be on Broadway. She'd been training. She was super talented. She was doing everything that she was supposed to do. And she felt like she was still invisible to the offices that really mattered. She was having trouble getting an agent, all that good stuff. So instead of submitting and waiting again to be chosen, she reached out to a casting office, She volunteered to be a reader at that office. So for those of you who don't know, when offices are still doing in person, oftentimes they will have a reader who doesn't work in the casting office be the person who reads the opposite of the actors in auditions. It's not particularly glamorous. You're not seen as a performer in those situations oftentimes, but you're in the room. I've done this myself. It is invaluable. And you're watching how that office thinks. You're seeing what they respond to. You're seeing who they are as people. You're also watching a lot of auditions, which is really helpful to see as an actor. But they are watching you show up reliably and give generously to a process that isn't about you. So she did that. She kept doing it. And she built a genuine relationship with this casting director. They just got along so well, mutual respect. And eventually, that casting director had her come in to read strategically on a project that she thought she would be a great fit in. It just so happened that the director of that project was on this actor's target list, which is crazy how that works. And she ended up getting cast in her first Broadway role without an agent because of that connection, because of that opportunity, because of that, the way that she was willing to be of service in that way, right? It was because they knew her. It was because they trusted her. She had given them something real before she ever asked for anything. That's the first move. Before you ask for anything, before you pitch yourself, before you need something, make an offer. Maybe it's volunteering. Maybe it's helping in some way. Find the version of that in your specific situation and do it first. And of course, the form that it takes will be different depending on who you're trying to connect with. Maybe it's volunteering on a project or on set. Maybe it's showing up consistently to support someone's work. Maybe it's seeing that someone had a win and reaching out and congratulating them. Maybe it's offering a skill that you have that someone actually needs. But the principle is the same. Service before ask every time. Now, the second move is about how you actually make contact with someone you admire and want to know. So most actors, when they reach out to, when they reach out to someone whose work they love, they will write from the position of like a fan, right? I love your work. You're so inspiring. I've watched everything you've done. Well, I really want to work with you. Like there's an energy of like, I'm a fan. And that is genuine. And there's something very sweet about that. But it also puts you beneath them. It positions you as someone who receives their work, not someone who might one day contribute to their work. And most people at a certain level will hear that kind of message and they'll appreciate it, but then they move on because there's nowhere for it to go. I mean, they're not looking at you as someone who's a collaborator. So what I teach instead is to write from the position of a potential collaborator. You're still admiring your work. You're still, offering that authentic compliment, that authentic recognition, but you're being specific about what you noticed in their work, why it matters to you as a fellow artist, and what it made you think about in terms of your own work and where you're headed. It's not about being bold, being self-promotional. It's about positioning yourself as someone who's in conversation with the work, not just consuming the work. So I hope that distinction makes sense. I saw the episode you directed of Good Girls, and the way you handled the scene in the third act made me think about something I've been working through in my own process. That is a completely different message than, you're so talented, I hope to work with you someday. One starts a conversation. The other gives an authentic compliment, but it's not a conversation. It's the end of the conversation before it even begins. And I want to be honest, the way that I teach takes more thought. You may not be able to send that message in 2 minutes, but the actors who take the time to write it are the ones who actually hear back and the ones who actually start a relationship. So it's worth it. So we've talked about being of service. We've talked about really reaching out from a place of a collaborator. The third move is the one that most people will skip because it's the least exciting. You got to keep going. Consistency, follow through. So one message usually will not build a relationship. One volunteer session doesn't build a relationship. One really good introduction at a networking event doesn't build a relationship. One workshop doesn't build a relationship. What builds a relationship is showing up repeatedly in small ways, over time, without needing anything back from it immediately. I have another client of mine who came to one of our industry sessions, who came to a meet and greet similar to what I'm about to tell you about. And afterwards, she reached out to the director that she'd met and offered to help out on set. She had a project coming up and she had talked about it in the session. And she wasn't doing this because she had something to gain right away, but because she really felt a connection to this director and she was genuinely interested in being close to the work. And I will tell you that director and she are now good friends. They've collaborated on multiple projects together. And it started with one reach out after one conversation in a setting exactly like what I'm inviting you to today. Okay. So that just shows you relationships compound. The ones you start now are the ones that are going to pay off in ways that you really can't predict, but only if you actually start them and only if you keep showing up after that first hello. You keep showing up. Okay. So I want to introduce you to someone. A few weeks ago, one of my friends, who is her hairdresser actually, connected me with a filmmaker named Lee Friedlander. My friend said, you have to meet this woman. And she started to tell me about her. And I was like, oh my God, you're right. I need to meet this person. So she's directed Good Girls, The Good Doctor, Chicago Med, NCIS, Doc. She was one of 10 women selected for NBC Universal's inaugural Film Forward directing program. And you know that's super competitive. There are thousands of applicants, right? She's been in this industry for decades. And she's built a career that most people would say requires luck and connections and being in the right place at the right time. But here's what my friend told me about Lee. She said Lee does like 5 reach outs a day before she lets herself do anything fun. So she said, every single day, 5 intentional contacts, not obligations, not emails she has to send, not like responding to junk in our email inboxes, but reach outs. So I want you to understand what this means. That means, this is a woman who, by any measure, has already made it in the industry. She has credit, she has relationships, she has leverage, and she still moves first every day before anything else. That is not an accident. That is exactly why she is where she is. So it's Tuesday today. This coming Thursday, March 19th, 2 p.m. Pacific, Lee is sitting down with us for 90 minutes. And I have 4 more guest passes available for people who want to be in that room. These are events that we have regularly inside the table. And they're amazing. You'll introduce yourself to her directly. You can submit questions. I'll make sure they get into the conversation. And you will walk away having had a real interaction with someone who has the kind of career that you are building toward and who is actively looking for actors for projects that she has in development right now. She's just sold a bunch of movies that she's developing. This is not a panel. This is not a lecture. This is a conversation with someone who operates exactly the way I've been describing for the last 20 minutes. Okay. So if you're on Instagram, comment the word access. I'll DM you the link to get a pass. It's also, I think it's in my bio. On YouTube and Facebook, the link is there in the description for you. There were 12 guest passes, 8 are already gone, so I have 4 left for non-table members. Table members get in free. So if this landed for you today, that is your sign to stop waiting and take this opportunity to move forward first. Get some practice in doing this. So I'll leave you with this. Everything that I taught you today, lead with service, reach out as a collaborator, keep showing up. None of that works if you're waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect credentials to do it from. The actors who build real careers do not wait until they're ready. They don't wait until they feel ready. We never feel ready. Literally never. They move when the opportunity is in front of them, even when it's uncomfortable, even when they don't know exactly how it's going to go. Lee Friedlander does 5 intros, 5 reach outs before breakfast. You can send 1 message today, right? So the link is there for you. Common access. I'll send it, and I'll see you Thursday.